Welcome to the Bleep Bulimia podcast with guest Abby Mallard, nutritionist in the eating disorder recovery space. Hello, everyone. I'm Lorianne. I am the host of Bleep Bulimia, and today I'm very pleased to have Abby Mallard with me. This is going to be really interesting. She is a nutritionist in the eating disorder recovery space. She is one who experienced knowing the struggles of recovering from an eating disorder. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Me too. So, as my question always is, obviously we know um, that having struggled with it, you have chosen to help others to recover. So tell us a little bit more about your journey.
Yeah, I am so honored to do the work that I do now. And I just think back to little 17-year-old Abby who asked for help and did a lot of healing work, and just really proud of that little girl. And I think that we don't think about that sometimes, like all of the hard work that goes into recovery. So I started struggling with bulimia when I was around 13 or 14. I was in a very suffocating, not great family environment. Childhood had been really good, and then we had a pretty drastic change, and just things kind of got really crappy. And food was my way of control. It was the one thing that I felt like I could control, even though really it had all of the control over me. But it was the one thing I could control what I was eating. I could control what was going into my body, coming out of my body, and kind of bounced back and forth between anorexia and bulimia for about five five years until I finally asked for help. I hid it very well. No one in my house knew that I was struggling. Um, and I think that was hard for me because I think part of it was control, but part of it was also almost like a, if I'm not doing well enough, maybe someone will notice me. I felt very unnoticed, very just kind of alone. And so finally, when I was 17, I was really struggling, and I wanted to get help. I wanted to get better. I knew that I didn't want to keep living life this way. It was, exhausting. Obsessing over food and body all of the time. Um, and, I was really struggling with depression too. Just feeling really alone and sad, but put on a happy face. No one knew what was going on. And I think I was just really tired of that. I was tired of pretending like everything was okay. Um, and asking for help was really scary. I could not speak the words aloud to anyone. And so I wrote a letter to my mom and I put it under her pillow. I hid it for her to find. And I'm really, really grateful that my mom was very supportive when she found that letter. She helped me get the help that I needed, set me up with a dietitian and a therapist. And I'm really grateful for that dietitian that I had. She was like a therapist as well. And I attribute a lot of my healing to her, and also the facts of what I do now. I think she kind of instilled that belief that I could also do it. And she also gave me some tough love. I was in a not great situation and I really wanted to get out. And I was 17 at the time and I was about to graduate from high school. I was homeschooled my whole life. Um, and I we had lived in a different state for a while. We were back in my original hometown, and I really wanted to move out when I was 18 and go back to where I really had community and people. And my dietitian told me, she was like, if you don't make progress and you don't gain some weight back and start to, you know, make some progress in your eating and in your recovery, I'm not going to let you go. And I think that that was a really tough thing to hear, but also it kind of gave me that push that I needed at that time of like, okay, I really want to get out of the situation that I'm in. And if I don't do the work to recover, like I'm not going to be able to go and kind of create the life for myself that I want. And so, yeah, it took, I mean, that was 17 to 18, and I did a lot of healing and recovery in that time. But my recovery journey, continued into college. I ended up going to college for nutrition. Um, and I would say probably by the time I was 2021, I started to feel like I was more fully recovered. A lot of back and forth, steps forward, step backwards in recovery. Um, but I'm really, really grateful that I don't struggle with that anymore, and that I now get to do the work that I do and helping support other people who are in that same space that I was in when I was younger.
I love it. That's a beautiful story. I know mine started at 17. So while you were coming to the part where you were starting, and it continued for 30 years. So, 48 is when I
Yeah.
recovered. And it's funny, I always say I'm so glad it's gone. I wonder why I did it. I know why I did it, but in this date today, why did you do it? And looking back at that poor 18-year-old that got 17, 18-year-old who got stuck in that whirlwind of, having to be perfect, having to appear perfect, having to appear happy, having, even if things were not so. And I had a great upbringing. I did. I mean, I can't complain. It was more outside society than it was internally for me. My home was good.
Yeah.
Um, competition with sisters happens, but other than
Mhm.
that, so I love this story. I think that there's going to be a lot of people listening to it that will be able to relate. And that great thing is that you took the steps as a young person to do it. So me, it took a while. My mother found out she didn't have the same support as your mother did for me, but then of course I'm much older than you. So back then they didn't have the understanding, the capacity to understand why. So
Yeah, yeah. There weren't quite as many resources back then.
no, none at all, and no understanding. My mother then found out she knew her sister had bulimia, and she didn't equate it until I had it, and then started learning more about it through me later on. So, tell us, what is your so you being a nutritionist in the eating disorder recovery space, give us a little bit more detail about possibly, if you can, what are your processes? What So somebody that's a listener would say, hey, you know what, I really need to reach out to Abby because because everybody heals differently and different processes. So this is why I have people like you on board. So go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So typically I don't work with people who are completely in an eating disorder at the time. I work more with people who have done a little bit of the healing work and are maybe, starting into recovery a little bit, who already have a therapist, a team around them. Um, I'm a little bit more of the long-term support care space for people who have struggled. Um, I do that a little bit to protect myself and my healing and my mindset, but also because I want people to have all of the resources and qualified people to help them in that recovery space. So people who are into recovery, who are, you know, starting in their journey of recovery, but need a little bit extra support, that's kind of where I step in. Um, I work pretty closely one-on-one with people. We meet a couple times a month, or maybe a little bit more depending where people are at. And I always say it's kind of like it's half therapy, half nutrition, because as you know, an eating disorder and our relationship with food is not just about food. It's about so much more, right? It's the mental piece, the mindset piece. And so I work pretty closely with people to just kind of help them shift that relationship with food and the different mindsets and beliefs that we have around food, helping to cut out a lot of the outside noise from society and culture, um, and really come to a little bit more of self-acceptance. Not necessarily adoring our bodies all of the time, but accepting our bodies and accepting ourselves for where we're at. And so we do a lot of self-acceptance practices, a lot of grounding into who you are as a person, really finding who you are rather than who everyone else wants you to be, all of the outside noise, all of the outside voices. Yeah. But then also with the food piece, I approach it differently with different people because for someone who's really in the middle of an eating disorder recovery journey, I don't necessarily want them to be tracking their food, right? Because that's not helpful. That's more obsessive behavior and isn't going to be helpful to them in the long run. Um, but with them, I have them more tune into the kind of intuitive eating and listening to their bodies, starting to recognize the hunger cues, learning what hunger cues are, learning what fullness cues are, helping them to pay attention to their bodies rather than, following the diets because that's what everyone says they're supposed to be doing, or not eating at a certain time or eating at a certain time. So helping them kind of tune into their body a little bit more rather than the strict rules around food. But then for other people, and I want to say with that too, while making sure they're also getting what their body needs nutritionally, right? Because for so many people, when they're in eating disorder recovery, if they're just listening to their bodies, they're probably not getting what they need food wise, because that's a big piece of an eating disorder is not really not necessarily eating a lot or eating binging and purging, binging, whatever the situation may be, so making sure that their body is getting what it needs nutritionally, just not having them track their food, more talking through it together, and that sort of thing rather than like an intense food journal. And then for other people who are maybe at a little bit further along in their healing or who are really working on listening to their body more with food and have a little bit of a healthier relationship with food, then we maybe pull in some of that tracking, do a little bit more focus on protein and just the different nutrients rather than completely calorie based, but also, again, making sure that they're getting what their body needs. 9 out of 10 times when someone comes and works with me, they're not getting enough food. We have a lot of us have grown up in that age of like 1,200 calorie diets, right? And that's what a child needs in order to function, in order to keep their body alive. And so a lot of people are on the low end of food. And so I help them to work up to what their body actually needs. And all while making sure that we're supporting their mindset in it, we're supporting their emotional health, their mental health. And yeah, so my processes are a little different with everyone because everyone's different. I really individualize my work with clients, and try to meet them where they're at. But that's a little bit of kind of the different ways that I work with people.
I love it. I get that. I had to deal with my relationship with food as well. And it's interesting because I work with women who are in their 50s and they all still go on diets. I don't diet. I refuse
Yes.
to. I'm going, if I want a piece of pizza, I'll have one. But funny thing is since I'm no longer bulimic, I'm not really interested in chocolate, ice cream, pizza. Like it fell out of that like because those are comfort foods and I don't base my eating anymore. If I crave them, I'll have them. So it's an open thing. But it's interesting when you change your relationship with food, how those trigger foods go by the sideway. And at least that in my
Mm,
case, that's what happened over time. I don't it I don't want them. Like I'm not craving them. I don't
yeah.
have a lot of cravings at all anymore. Um, but you also
Yeah.
talked
I
about,
love
sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I love how you said comfort foods because I do a lot of that work with people as well, where, I don't think it's necessarily wrong to emotionally eat, to have a piece of chocolate when you're sad, to have a drink to celebrate, but also having those other supportive coping mechanisms to regulate your nervous system. That's a really big piece of my work too, is the nervous system regulation.
You're interesting. Um, so yeah, and then the other thing too that remind me when you were talking about things, I know that one thing so there's a book I always speak about, Joan Borzynsko. Um, I can't even remember the name of the title of the book now, but her book was excellent and was part of the helping. Um, it's got to do with the mind, and food,
Mm.
and uh, talking about the fullness level. So a lot of people eat really quickly. My daughter eats very, very quickly, my mother too. And I go, slow down, because that trigger comes in 20 minutes. And if you eat too fast, then all of a sudden you're going, oh, I ate too much. Well, because you ate three times as fast as you should have, it does. That part helped me so much, slowing down my eating. It was night and
Mm.
day. Yeah. Because as a bulimic, it was like,
Yeah, I love that.
you know, so I like that you're talking
Hmm.
about the hunger triggers and the full triggers. I think those are very important too. And are they hunger triggers, or are they just you're bored, or you need water or whatever? So those are really important to be aware of. So I'm really glad that you work with those. So when you work with people, do you work with them like one-on-one? I get it, but in person, or do you also do Zoom meetings? How does that work?
Yeah, yeah, I meet with people in person and virtually. So I work with people from all over. So if someone is local, we meet in person a lot of times, but I also have that virtual option, available if it works better with their schedule. And then also if someone is out of state, we can work virtually together.
Beautiful. So you're also a yoga teacher. Do you find that that was also something that helped you in your recovery? I'd like to know about that. I think that's awesome. Yoga's big. I used to take it. I don't anymore, but I'm thinking of going back to it. But please tell us about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So yoga was not really something in my recovery. Um, I didn't have access to that. I didn't really know about yoga in my recovery. But later on in life, after I was recovered, um, I still was struggling with some anxiety and just regulating my nervous system. And yoga has been very helpful to me in um, nervous system regulation, in calming my nervous system, in helping with my anxiety, and just also connecting a little bit deeper with my body, that mind body connection. And it just pairs really well with the work that I do. I do think that it's a really, really beautiful tool in recovery. And so I got certified as a yoga teacher last year. I've been teaching for almost a year now. And yeah, I love it. It's a really beautiful practice, a really great way to help people connect a little bit more with themselves. I do a lot of focus in my yoga classes of, tuning into your breath, tuning into your body, listening to your body, taking what you need, not worrying about what someone else looks like or what they're looking at you and thinking. So a lot of that still kind of mind body piece, and I love it. It's a really beautiful piece of my life. I will say I don't get to take quite as many classes as I'd like to. It's a little bit harder when you're teaching a lot to go take classes. But I really love having that as an offering for my students and then my clients as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it seems to connect very well together. Yeah, I love that. It just gels, really, it does.
Yeah.
So if you can please let our listeners know, how can they get a hold of you, learn more about what you do, all of that, that'd be great.
Yeah. So my business name is Health My Friend. I try to keep that really simple. That's me across all platforms. Health My Friend. My main social media platform is Instagram. If you follow me on there, I'll reach out. If you send me a message, I will respond. And then my website is healthmyfriend.com. I have a podcast as well called Health My Friend. So everything is under Health My Friend. And if you need support or if you just want to talk, I would love to hear from you.
Well, that's wonderful. I love having fellow podcast hosts on my show. I think it's really important. And again, also because you speak to health, that's really important. This is what this podcast is about, is for people to find
Yeah.
ways to reach out to someone who can help them. So really appreciate your time, really seriously. And to listeners, again, as I said, this is where, you find the people who can help you for the recovery, and it doesn't matter what age you are. I know that some people will feel that bulimia is just for kids, but some of us have carried it on, like I did for 30 years. So I was 48 when I quit. Other ones through the pandemic started their bulimia and they were in their 40s. So, but it doesn't matter what age you are, reach out for recovery. It doesn't, don't feel weird that you're older, because we are out there. So I've been there. So anyway, thanks again for being here to help spread the message of recovery and how important it is. I really appreciate you, Abby.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Lorianne. I really appreciated being on your podcast, and thank you for sharing stories and helping get resources and support out there for people.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to visit me at bleepbulimia.com.